Because I was just extremely like mentally exhausted, and I was just fatigued every day after work. I was just exhausted, and I couldn't do anything else because work was just draining me. And I'm like, like I worked so hard prior to this, and I'm like, I need to be doing something a little bit more fulfilling and something that I'm more passionate about. In the beginning, I loved it. I loved going to work and I was super motivated. And I think like at a point where I just felt a little demotivated is when I was like, this isn't for me.
You're listening to the Quit Your Job and Get Creative podcast, where we talk about quitting your unfulfilling job and pursuing your creative entrepreneurial dreams. My goal is to help you realize earning a living doing what you love is possible for you. You'll hear stories of women who have quit their 9-to-5 jobs and started their creative businesses. You'll learn how they did it, the ups and downs, and secrets to success. I believe that you are good enough and capable to live out your dreams. I'm your host, Jocelyn Clarkson. Now, let's get started. Welcome, guys. I am so excited for today's guest. I have Nasreen Hussain, and Nasreen is the visionary and creative director behind Humans of High Fashion. She is a freelance stylist with a master's degree in organizational behavior and business, as well as a fashion styling certification at the School of Style. Guys, she has styled some huge brand names. I'm talking about Elle Magazine, Nike, Shopbop, L'Oficial, and the list goes on. She is heavily influenced by her travels and primarily uses fashion as a form of expression to connect with different cultures and diversities. Hyper-focused on using her brand for self-expression by establishing a unique visual identity, she brings thought-provoking ideas, styles, and fresh perspective to the fashion styling industry. In her spare time, she loves to cook, travel, and you can find her at fashion shows soaking in all the inspiration. Nasreen today will be talking to you about how you can start your styling career. Welcome, Nasreen.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, I am so excited to have you on. And, for our listeners, I want them to know that, we had met prior and we have actually worked together to put a styling event, for my clothing brand. Was it last year already, actually?
Yeah, it's 1 year actually this month, this end of the month. Yeah.
That was such a fun event to put together with you. And, just working with you and following your journey, even in the past year, girl, you have grown so much. You have you amaze me. And so when I was thinking about, who can I bring on this podcast, I knew I had to have you on.
Oh, thank you.
All right. So I love to start this podcast by using or asking you this question.
Okay.
What did you want to be when you were young?
So when I was young, I wanted to be an artist. And that was really early in my childhood. And then it shifted to an architect. So that's what I wanted to do when I was younger. And then as time went on, it changed. But it was just so many different experiences that changed all of those things. But initially, I wanted to be an artist.
What kind of artist? Were like a painter?
Yeah, a painter. I wanted to be a painter. And because I loved coloring and drawing. And I used to tell my mom, like, hey, I want to be an artist. And then as time went on, I was like, I'm really interested in architecture. So my mom's office was getting like remodeled. So she used to bring home all like the prints. So I used to have like a folder, and I was so interested in architecture. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. But then as time went on, it changed and shifted, and it was just a crazy journey.
I love that, even though it changed and it shifted, one thing stayed pretty consistent is that both, being an artist and being an architect, it's all about design and it's still in the realm of art. So I think that even though you didn't have it really precise, you kind of were going in that right direction and, kind of like focusing on your creative talents. So if you didn't know right away, then how did you discover your talent for styling and fashion? And how did you come about to say, like, actually, I want to be a creative director and a stylist?
So basically, it was in college where I kind of was, like what do I want to do? So I majored in psychology, and I was doing pre-pharmacy at the time. So like right when I started college. So in my family, it's always, we're always gearing towards like healthcare field. And it's in my family, there's like a lot of doctors and nurses and optometrists and pharmacists. Like my sister is a pharmacist. So going into the creative field, I didn't even really think that it was an option. So I was majoring in psychology, doing pre-pharm, and then I decided, you know what? I don't know if this is for me. I don't know if like I can do pre-pharmacy. So I was trying to figure it out, and in the meantime, I worked retail. So I don't know if you heard of like Art and B and BB, like it was like back in the day at Woodfield Mall. So I used to work there as a sales associate. So I'm like, okay, I'm like, I really love it. And I've always loved fashion. Like as a little girl, I've loved fashion and clothes and putting outfits together. And, I used to tell my dad, like, put me in the fanciest outfit when I was like very little, like to go to like a sleepover or something. So I've always loved fashion. So I decided to do like a part-time job at Art. Like I started off at Art and B, and then I went to BB, and I'm like, I love like the fashion aspect and styling, but I also loved like the leadership aspect of it. So after like those part-time jobs, I went into Ulta as like a beauty advisor, and then went into a leadership role in Ulta. So I'm like, I think I found my calling. It's going to be like leadership and like a manager position. So after I did Ulta, and this was like, I was in Ulta up until I graduated college. Then after that, I'm like, okay, I was starting to look for jobs more in my field. Like I wanted to do, like I had a background in psychology, but I wanted to do more like a leadership role. So I started applying, and then I got into an AMA program for Bank of America. So it's basically like a leadership program where it trains you on different like sectors in the banking center, and how to lead that team. So like a lead of tellers and bankers. So I was like, oh my God, this is my dream job. And I loved it at first. I loved being a leader and inspiring people and mentoring, and it was great. It was like a 2-year training program, and then it placed you in like an assistant manager role. So I did that for a couple of years. Then I went into an official like operations role for Bank of America, and I loved it. It was great. And I did that for altogether, I did that for about 6 years, I would say. But towards the end, it just became so tiring. And I was just like, I don't know if this is for me. I love being a leader, but it just was really tiring me out. I was just like, I don't know if this is for me. And but I'm like, I'm not a quitter. I'm like, I'm going to just see this through, and then I want to grow in the company, and I want to grow in my role. So I just was hanging on and trying to do my best every single day. So I was like, but I don't think I was fully happy in the job anymore. So my husband actually, he was like, Nasreen, if you are not into this, just quit. Like he was telling me over and over, just quit, like, do something that you love. So then I decided, okay, I'm just gonna quit. Okay. And I'm like, I was so nervous about it because I've literally worked prior to that. I've worked for like 10 years. So I have worked since I was literally 17 years old. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be so weird because I've never not had a job before. And I decided to take the plunge, and I quit. And I'm like, thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and tell my parents, because I don't know how they're gonna take it, or right, what they're gonna say. And I was talking to my dad, and I was like, I had just come back from a trip, and I was just like, I was going to tell him, and then I decided, I'm gonna see him tomorrow. I'll just tell him then. So the next day came, and my mom called me and told me he passed away. Oh, and that's what kind of
I didn't know this, and I'm thank you for sharing this. This is very, this is like a touching and personal part of your life, and thank you for allowing us and sharing this with us.
Yeah, it was really tough because it was very sudden, and after that, I kind of was like a little bit stuck, and I didn't know like what to do. I was just like, what just happened? Okay. And obviously I wasn't doing the best mentally. And I decided like a month later, I was just like, I can't be stuck in this rut. Like I need something to distract me because I had just quit my job. So I didn't really have anything to distract me with. So I decided to go back to finish my master's. And it was during then when I was doing my master's and trying to finish that up, I'm like, okay, what do I want to do? I knew that I wanted to be my own boss and start my own business. So I was debating and deciding. And in the meantime, I was working on a personal project for my dad, and that was my food blog. So I started my food blog about like 7 months after he passed away. So in the meantime, I was doing my master's, starting my food blog, and that was in honor of like all of his recipes. So that kind of gave me a little bit of fulfillment. And I decided, okay, so now what do I want to do in my career? It was really like an up and down journey for me.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy. And my husband has a lot to do with just pushing me and just motivating me. So he was just like, you love fashion, maybe something in that. So I decided, okay, so I put all these different roles in fashion. I'm like, what can I do? And I'm like, I think styling, putting outfits together, and I know that's just so like small now that I think about it and compared to what actually styling is. But I decided, let me get more education on that. So I went, and while I was doing my master's, I did my certification in editorial fashion styling. Learned a lot about that, and I'm like, okay, now what? Now what do I do? How do I go from here? So I took a lot of business courses. So I was doing my master's in organizational behavior and management, which kind of gave me the tools to create a business and what I need to do, what direction I need to go in. But I needed something a little bit more personal. So I took this boot camp, like business boot camp class, and it kind of narrowed down every single thing on like what to do and how to start a business. So I took that and I put all the tools together, and I was going, and it took me about a year and a half after that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to launch my business at this day and this year. So that year and that day came, but a week before that, I find out that my brother-in-law got diagnosed with cancer. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, for me, like family comes first, like no matter what, like that's my priority, like family over anything and everything. And I still kind of abide by that. So another 6 months later, he's doing great now. 6 months after that, I launched Humans of High Fashion. And then after that, it was just it was like a bumpy road after that to get to like this point. But it was in June of 2020 is when I launched Humans of High Fashion.
Wow, Nasreen, you have been on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I mean, from studying pharmacy to working retail to then beauty at Ulta to then banking at Bank of America. I mean, you have dipped your toes in so many different industries, which I love. And you talk about, it was a bumpy road, but I think that's just a reflection of life and all of the, the experiences you had to go through with your dad and your brother-in-law and your family. It's like that's a reflection of life. Not everything is like this. Like in business, everyone wants like a consistent upward graph, right? And that's really not what life is. So I mean, I'm just so amazed that you were able to experience such different industries in such a short amount of time. So when you were at Bank of America, right? And you said you love the leadership aspect of it. How did it feel once you started reaching a point where you're like, okay, this isn't really what I want to do, right? It's starting to get a little tiring. This isn't where my calling is. How did those signs show up? How did they manifest in real life? Like, were you finding that, maybe you were hitting snooze on the alarm? Maybe you were, just stressing out a lot. Like, what were those signs from God, from the universe that was like, Nasreen, this isn't it?
I think it was because I was just extremely mentally exhausted, and I was just fatigued. Every day after work, I was just exhausted, and I couldn't do anything else. And that's one of the reasons that I had to take a break from doing my master's, is because work was just draining me. And I'm like, I worked so hard prior to this, and I'm like, I need to be doing something a little bit more fulfilling and something that I'm more passionate about. And those were, in the beginning, I loved it. I loved going to work, and I was super motivated. And I think at a point where I just felt a little demotivated is when I was like, this isn't for me.
So you talked about your husband kind of being really this motivator for you, but ultimately, what gave you the courage to quit? Because you talked about, maybe the pressures that you had from your family, and not necessarily that, again, I don't know if they were pressuring you, but you have this, family that comes from a medical background, right? And now you're working in banking, and you've been working for, since you were 17. So what ultimately gave you that courage to finally say, all right, I'm pulling the plug on this, and I'm doing something different?
So prior to my dad passing away, I went through 2 other crazy life experiences, which was my aunt passing away a year before that, and then my grandmother, my dad's mom, who passed away 3 months before him. And it came to a point where I was like, life is too short to be doing something that I'm totally not in love with. So after experiencing those 2 losses, I was like, I'm going to do something that I love, and life is too short, and I need to be doing something that I'm most passionate about.
Yeah. And, I think that's such a good point. And, it's unfortunate that, it does take certain instances and experiences and losses like that to remind us that life is short. Because as I work with a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, women who want to start their businesses, some of them keep saying, oh, I'll do it later, or I'll do it later. And they kind of keep saying later, and and tomorrow, and next month, and next year never comes, right? And they're in the same position that they are now. And it really, sometimes it really takes something that severe to really shake it up, to be like, hey, this is life, and it's short, and it could change in the blink of an eye.
Exactly.
So I think that's really important that you say, Nasreen, because again, people put it off. People put off their dreams. They don't ever pursue them, or they say later, 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 when in reality, later is not promised.
Exactly.
So, and kind of shifting gears, because I do want to celebrate your business and all your success, and just, from pharmacy to where you are now. I mean, you have made immense progress, and you have worked for some big names like Nike, Elle Magazine. How have you been able to do that?
So with any business, you basically don't get a day off, and you really don't get a day off. You have to be working at it every single day. So for me, for the last 3 years, I worked at it every day and came up with a business plan, and every single step that I took was already planned out.
Hi, Boss Babe. I want to take a quick second to tell you about how you can get free business advice coaching and trainings from me for free. Yes, I said that right. Absolutely free. If you are thinking of starting a business or have already started a business, but you're not getting the sales that you want or are struggling in general, then you need to attend my free weekly live trainings. I cover topics like how to prepare to quit your job or how to get over your fear of showing your face online and so much more. You can register using the link in my show notes or simply go to my Instagram at Quit Your Job and Get Creative and click on the link in bio where it says free training and make sure to register. Can't wait to see you there and help you grow your business. Now let's get back to the show.
So I graduated for my master's in June of 2019. And in July of 2019, I gave birth to my baby boy. So I was like, okay, I still can't take my eye off the ball. So before going into labor, I literally put together a game plan of what I'm going to do, like when he's sleeping and what can I do while feeding him. And so just so I have these notes to go back and see, because, having a baby, it's just such a big change and a beautiful change in your life. But I'm like, I can't backtrack or I can't stop because I've come this far. So just having a business plan, being organized at all time and working at it every single day, and also the power of networking. And I've met some amazing people in, Chicago. So they've also really helped me. Like FGI was one of them. So I'm on the board of FGI right now, and, they've done a great job on like helping me and mentoring me as well. So I think it's just being consistent and having a game plan.
I love that. Being consistent. Yeah. And having a game plan is important because, as you know, when you start off as an entrepreneur, you feel like you have to do all these things, and it's so hard to just pick one thing. So it's so crucial to have a game plan, to have like, okay, step one, we're going to do X, because it's so easy to just dibble dabble in certain things. And then when you don't get the results you want, instead of being consistent, people jump onto a different thing. Exactly. So it's so important to have a game plan. No, I love that. So I want to dive more into the topic, right? How to start your styling career. So for the women who are listening, who are working in a job right now and they're looking to start their styling career and fashion, let me ask you this. What does it take to make it in this business?
I think to make it in this business, you just need to stay true to yourself, stay consistent no matter what is thrown at you. So you're going to have so many down days and so many obstacles. And what it's going to take is not only overcoming those obstacles, but also still keep on going. Because let me tell you, like, there's been so many days where I just felt like really demotivated and really, really like, oh man, should I keep doing this? Should I keep going? So my advice would be like, take a mental health day, pick a day where you just do nothing, just relax your brain, and then go strong the next day. So don't beat yourself up if you're taking a break, a 1-day break or a 2-day break or a week break, but just keep going no matter what the obstacle is, no matter if people are saying, okay, people are going to just come at you and just say a lot of different things. You just have to stay true to yourself and just keep going no matter what.
I love that. Yeah, mental health days are so important, especially when we live in a culture where it's almost like we're meant to feel guilty if we're not productive all the time, right? And it's like sometimes like you're human, right? Which it goes with the name, right? Humans of high fashion. You're human, right. And so it's so important to pause and recharge because you can't be your 100% optimal self 100% of the time, right? And especially when you have family, you have a son, and you have other things going on in your life beyond your business. So
Right.
it's so important to be able to focus on those other aspects of your life, but also to give yourself some grace and take a pause, right? So you can stay sane.
Exactly.
No,
And it
I
is
love
so
that.
important to take a pause and just to take a break, and also just prioritizing, just making sure you know what's the most important thing in life. And this is not the end all be all. So life is short and you have to focus. There's other things that require more attention sometimes. And it's okay to just take a breather, take a break, and focus on those other things.
Absolutely. And so how would you recommend that someone gets started as a stylist? So say you have someone who has been, has always loved fashion, but again, didn't pursue it. They're at their jobs right now that, isn't in fashion, and they want to pursue that, that career path. How do you recommend someone get started?
So I would probably say to go ahead and research the position. Research what styling is or what you want to do in fashion, and really take at least, let's say, 2 to 3 hours and write down everything that kind of sticks out to you. And am I recommending that you just quit your job and just jump into the field? No. While you're in your job, do this as like a come back from work, or when you're done with work, take about 2 hours and research the position. After you know everything about what that position entails, then you can go on to the next realm and be like, okay, how do I get like more certified or educated on this role? And there's so many different classes and online classes and certificates out there that can equip you with the knowledge to become a stylist or a personal stylist, editorial stylist. And once you do that, you can enroll in whichever class or you choose, but while keeping your day job. Once you learn about it, I would probably go on to the next step and shadow somebody that's already a stylist and get some experience. And this can take about a few hours a week. So you're just going to have to, I think the hard part here is trying to balance out your day job with learning about the role. So it's going to be tough at first, but if you just organize it and plan it out properly, it's going to become really easy.
Do you think that you need to live in a major city to be able to get access to jobs and, establish stylists?
I can't really speak for people who don't live in a major city, but from what I've heard, people do say, yes, you do need to live in a major city, like New York or LA. The world is your oyster over there. And I feel like the position, like it's just more easily accessible. But I think that if you can start from anywhere, and I guess depending on what route you want to take, you may have to end up in a major city. But can you do personal styling from a different city or state? Yeah, I think you can for personal. I think editorial, I feel like you do need to live in more of a major city. If you want to do more commercial, I think it's important to, see like what cities, what clients they work with. And from there, I think you can go to whichever direction you want.
Right. I love that you distinguish the difference between personal styling and editorial and commercial, because they're separate things, right? And I think, personal styling, as long as there's people who are interested in, elevating themselves, then yeah, there's an opportunity. But yes, if you're looking for more editorial commercial, then it would make sense that you would have to live in a hub where those places are and where those shoots are taking place. So that's a good Good point. So how would you recommend that someone start building their portfolio?
So I would just reach out to any like photographers in the area and makeup artists that are also, you know, looking to build their portfolios and collaborate with them. I think that's like the best and easiest way. I know with any business, you have to invest a little bit of not only yourself, but like financially, you have to invest in your business. But I think in the beginning to start out with, that's a good way to build your portfolio is find other people in the same position as you and collaborate with them.
That is so key. I find that collaborations with other businesses who are like not competitors, but complement your business, like in this instance, photographers, makeup artists, like when I've done collaborations, that has led to so many opportunities because you're also leveraging each other's audiences. And as you promote, you know, your work and yourself, you're also promoting other people along with it. So I find that doing those collaborations are so crucial when you're first starting out and you're also low budget. But, you know, one of the things that allows you to also invest is also having that job. So not immediately quitting, right? And then trying to figure out how to scramble to invest in your business. Like that's, right. It can be really hard, which is why it's always so much easier to start, you know, this side hustle while you have your job so that, you know, if you do determine that this is the path you want to take, you have the comfort and the security of like a salary, right? For you to be able to afford, you know, investing in your business. No, so I definitely agree with you. And how can they build relationships with, you know, with designers to have access to clothes? Like say, you know, and again, I'm not in the styling industry, so I'm just kind of basing it off what I think, how it works. But how do you build these relationships with designers to be able to place them in certain jobs?
You know, in the beginning, I went to basically every boutique and department store and just, you know, handed out my business card, like introduced myself and, you know, just kept consistent with that. And I think it's important to just network in the beginning and keep consistent at that. Visit boutiques and big department stores and ask, and don't be afraid to ask people for help. And if you find somebody at a big department store, like someone in PR, don't be afraid to, you know, get their advice on having a relationship with X, Y, and Z. I think it's important. Sometimes we kind of shy away from asking for help. So I think it's important to just have that courage and keep going.
You know, I love that you point out going to boutiques and going to department stores, because I think a lot of times people think it's enough to just create a website or maybe an Instagram and then post a couple times and then expect people to find you.
Yeah.
So, you know, I find that oftentimes people are like, you know, I've done this, it's not working, no one's coming to my website. And it's like, when you're first starting out, you have to be hungry enough to go out there and, like you said, ask for what you want, network, show up, right? Like no one's going to be telling you you have to do this on your own, because if you don't, I mean, I don't know how you expect to grow. Oftentimes a lot of people, like I said, like simply starting a website and posting on Instagram, like that is not enough. You have to want it bad enough. You have to show up and be where your customers are. So I love that you pointed it out. So any last tips regarding styling before I move on to my fun questions?
I would just say keep your head up high. You're going to have a lot of good days and you're going to have a lot of bad days. Don't let anything discourage you. Be consistent and organized and keep going.
I love that. And I think that can be applied to literally every entrepreneurship avenue that people take, not just fashion and styling. So thank you for that. So moving on to my fun question. So if you guys have not followed Nasreen, you guys need to follow her at Humans of High Fashion. I'll link it in the show notes below. But it's so cool watching Nasreen's Instagram and her journey because she has been to some cool fashion shows. Now, Nasreen, how do you get invited to these shows, and which one has been your favorite?
So my favorite, well, let's backtrack. I think, not, like I said, the power of networking and just, reaching out to the fashion houses. And because I work with different editorials, I work with a lot of, I style a lot of these brands. So it's important to just build that relationship and connection. I'm still in the process of, building. I feel like I still need to build and grow every single day. So I'm not done yet. I still feel like I have a long way to go. But my favorite show would obviously be the Off-White show. Yes. And because that was Virgil Abloh's last show in Paris, it was just phenomenal. And it was just like the best experience ever. So I would have to say that was my favorite.
And I'm sure there were some big names. So I'm sure you saw a lot of celebrities there. Yeah. I feel like everyone saw, like if you're on Instagram during that time, like you definitely saw all the big name celebrities. And then I see Nasreen, I'm just like, what? That's so cool. No, that is so amazing. I think that's one of that has to be one of the perks of the job, right? Like being able to get access to these shows. Like that's so amazing. And another question, right? Like, do you ever, I know you have your down days, right? But do you ever feel like a failure in your business? Like, do you ever feel like, oh, I don't know if I should keep going with this? And If you do, how do you deal with that? How do you get yourself out of that funk?
Like for my last few years, I think at least half the time I have thought this to myself. Okay, I should quit. I feel like a failure. But I think the thing that kind of gets me out of it is taking a few days to myself to recharge, to recuperate, and just think of a new goal or a new business plan. So what really helps me is, let's say if I'm having a down day, I go and I'm like, okay, let me cook my favorite meal. So like I mentioned before, I have a food blog. So I really focus my energy on that and I just stop thinking and I'm just cooking. So I would kind of find a hobby that's something that relaxes you mentally, focus on that for a few days, recharge and go back to that. Because as a creative and as, when you're in the creative field, you really need to have days where you just don't do anything because your mind is constantly on overdrive, constantly running. It's so important to just you can just schedule a day. Like this is a day I don't do anything. I just watch a good movie. So it's so important to do that and find a hobby that just re-energizes you and inspires you just to keep going.
That is such good advice. I mean, I absolutely 100% agree. And, again, going back to the pausing, taking a pause, like that is so important. And I think oftentimes people try to avoid those feelings of failure. And it's like, no, that is part of the journey. You can't avoid that. That's just something that's going to happen. And you just, the best thing is to take a pause, sit through those feelings, reset and recalibrate, and then go back at it again tomorrow. So I think that's really important to point out. So Nasreen, where can people find you if they want to follow your journey, if they want to learn more about you or work with you? Where can people find you?
So they can find me on my Instagram at Humans of High Fashion or my website, www.humansofhighfashion.com. I'm also with the Rock Agency based in Chicago and Wisconsin. So you can also reach out to me from there. And I also have a LinkedIn. So there's many different avenues where you can find me and contact me.
Awesome. Well, I'll be linking your Instagram, your LinkedIn, and your website on the show notes below, so you guys can easily click on there and go check out Nasreen. You guys at least have to follow her Instagram. Like, it is just such an inspiration, and she has the most like coolest pictures of art and color. So it's just like it's like literally an inspiration mood board. So I absolutely love it. Thank you so much, Nasreen, for sharing your story with us. And honestly, it is so amazing to be able to hear from amazing women like you who have gone through so many hurdles, but at the end of the day, you're resilient and you're passionate about what you do. So it's been an honor to talk to you today.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn, for having me. This was so much fun.
Of course.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode. I truly hope you learned something new or became inspired to start your business. Make sure you're following me on Instagram so you can stay updated on new episodes. That's Quit Your Job and Get Creative. And if you ever have any questions around business or quitting your job, please don't hesitate to reach out to me via Instagram message. I'm here for you. See you in the next episode.